Hello friends, in this video we are going to learn about tympanic membrane. Where this tympanic membrane is located, it is located between the external ear and the middle ear. Actually you can say it separates the external ear and the middle ear. How it is made up of, what are the layers of the tympanic membrane, what are the nerve supplies of the tympanic membrane, what are the parts of the tympanic membrane, what is cone of light, everything we are going to discuss in this video. So see this video up to the last. Let's begin the topic. So first of all, tympanic membrane, also known as the eardrum, which is just 0.1 millimeter thick, as well as it is a semi-transparent membrane. What is the angle of the tympanic membrane? So tympanic, if I am talking about the right side of the tympanic membrane is not situated like this. It is situated like this. It is situated forming an angle with this horizontal, you can say, with external acoustic meatus. It is forming what angle? So it is less than 90, hai na? So it's forming around a 55-degree angle with these external acoustic meatus line. So here you can say it forming the 55-degree of angle with the external acoustic meatus line. Now if we talk about the dimension of the tympanic membrane, so longitudinally it is around 9 to 10 millimeter. It is just near to 1 centimeter, and the breadth, that is around 8 to 9 millimeter, just minus 1 from the length. That is the 8 to 9 millimeter. It is width. Now, this tympanic membrane is made up of how many layers? It is made up of, from outside to inside, if we talk about, it's made up of 3 layers. And what are these 3 layers? So remember the 3 layers of the tympanic membrane. From the outer layer, which is known as the circular layer, which is made up of what? It is made up of the stratified squamous epithelium, which is just like the skin. So external acoustic meatus skin is continuing outside of the tympanic membrane. Then the middle ear is also known as the fibrous layer. It is having 2 layers of the fibers. What are these 2 layers? So just remember the outer one, which is known as the radiatal fibers, and the inner one, which is known as the circular fibers. So radial fibers as well as the circular fibers. So radial outside and the circular inside. And what is the innermost layer? Innermost layer also known as the mucus layer. And why it is known as the mucus layer? Because the middle ear mucosa is continuing with the inner part of the tympanic membrane. You can just remember by this diagram that this tympanic membrane, the middle part is the fibrous, and the outer part is just continuation of the external ear skin. That's why it is a cuticular. And the inner layer just continuation of the mucosa of the middle ear. And the middle fibrous layer, there are radial fibers as well as the circular fibers. That's how the tympanic membrane is formed. Just 1 centimeter around the drum, it is a ear drum. Because in drum, when we beat, it also take the vibrations of our sound. Yes. Now the parts of the tympanic membrane, it is divided into the 2 parts. What are those 2 parts of the tympanic membrane? The most of the part is known as the pars tensa. Pars tensa. And just you can say the small part, which is known as the pars flaccida, which is also known as the Sarpinous membrane. So remember where the Sarpinous membrane is located. So Sarpinous membrane onto the tympanic membrane, you can say it is upward as well as the backward side. Between what? It is situated between 2 malleolar folds. What are those malleolar folds? One is known as the anterior malleolar fold and another one is known as the posterior malleolar fold. And between these 2 folds, there is a presence of the pars flaccida or Sarpinous membrane, which is a least vibrable. The maximum vibrations is taken by the pars tensa. And these pars tensa onto the outer part thickened. Here onto the outer part, it is a thickened, and what it forms? It forms the annulus tympanicus. So you can say this pars tensa, which is the majority part of the tympanic membrane, onto the outer side is thickened and form the annulus tympanicus. And what is another name of the pars flaccida? It is also now called as the malleal folds. They are also known as the malleal folds. Now how the tympanic membrane is divided? The tympanic divided into the 4 quadrants. How these quadrants? Just draw one vertical line and one horizontal line. So you can see here that is a one quadrant opposite, that is known as the two anterior quadrant, two posterior quadrant, anterior superior, then anterior inferior, posterior superior, and posterior inferior quadrant. And the cone of light, when we force the light onto, because of the presence of the air into the middle ear, yes, or that cone of light is visible onto the antero-inferior quadrant. Very good. Now, what is the direction of the tympanic membrane? So, tympanic membrane is situated like this, forming the 55-degree angle from the external acoustic canal. Its direction, for the direction, we will draw one 90-degree line from the tympanic membrane. The direction would be, it is slightly anterior, or you can say forward, as well as the direction is downward side, downward, as well as the laterally. So, direction of the tympanic membrane, if you are asked, then it is simply known as the forward. Yeah, it is a forward, downward, as well as the laterally direction of the tympanic membrane. So, can capture the waves, we can say sound waves are easily captured. Now remember the nerve supply of the tympanic membrane. So from the outer side, we can divide the nerve supply into the two halves. One is anterior half and the posterior half. Anterior half is supplied by the auriculotemporal nerve, which is the branch of the mandibular nerve. And the posterior half, onto the lateral surface, posterior half, it is supplied by what? Which is the branch of the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. And onto the inner side, it is supplied by which nerve? Simple, it is inner side, it is supplied by the tympanic plexus. And what is the branch? Then the tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve. So nerve supply, it is very much easy. Onto the lateral side, divided into the two halves. One anterior side, auriculotemporal, which is branch of the mandibular. Posterior side, auricle nerve, which is branch of the vagus. And on the inner side, tympanic branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve. Blood supply, if you want to remember, it is mainly supplied by the deep auricular artery, which is a part of the maxillary artery. And the inner surface, which is mainly supplied by the anterior tympanic artery, which is a branch of the maxillary artery. And the posterior tympanic artery, which is the branch of the posterior auricular artery. So there are three arteries, three nerves. And venous drainage, it is mainly drained into the external jugular vein, as well as the inner side, it is draining into the transverse sinus and the pterygoid venous plexuses. So in the tympanic membrane, when there is a otitis media is there, the pus is so much accumulated into the middle ear. What is the way to come out? Then it produces a hole into the tympanic membrane perforation, which is a part of the CSOM, and reduced hearing. That is the end of our video. I hope you all have understood the tympanic membrane very well. See you into the next video.